Hi, it's Wendy. This tutorial is a little mini lesson on how to read a yarn label. So I've got two different yarns here to show you a couple of different concepts. On every yarn label, you're going to find the name of the yarn, of course, and then a section that looks like this. The first thing that you'll see is a number. This tells you the weight of the yarn. This is a superfine or number 1 yarn, and that refers to how thick it is. So if you have a fine yarn, you're going to have more yarn per the number of grams, right? Or the ounces. In this case, it's a 50 gram ball or 1.75 ounces, so your metric and imperial measurement. And there's 191 yards or 175 meters. So 175 meters for 50 grams. So if you have to figure out how much yarn you need for a whole project, that's going to help you. It might say you need, say, 600 grams for a baby blanket, or it might say you need so many yards. So you can use those numbers to help you figure out what you need. If you say you need 600 meters for a project, you could divide it 600 divided by 175. That's going to be about 3.5 balls to get your 600 meters, so you would buy 4. You'll also see on this label the composition of the yarn, what it's made out of. In this case, it's 90% acrylic and 10% nylon. Beside your weight notation or your number, you're going to find 2 boxes, one with a knitting needles inside and one with a crochet hook. These are your suggested needle sizes for this yarn. So for a 4-inch or 10 centimeter square, using 3.25 millimeters, the company is suggesting that the typical person will get 28 stitches and 36 rows, and that's in a stockinette stitch. So knit on one side and purl on the back side. You're going to get 4 inches out of 3.25 needles, doing 28 stitches wide, 36 rows. That's a US number 3 needle. So if you are following a pattern, it will probably tell you what needle size you need. However, if you're just making, say, a scarf or a baby blanket and you're coming up with your own stitch pattern, that will give you a suggestion of what needles might be appropriate for that yarn. Same thing with the crochet hook spot here, 22 single crochets and 24 rows. Make about 4 inches square using a 3.25 millimeter hook. If you tend to crochet loose, you might want to go down to a 3. If you tend to crochet tight, you might go up to a 3.5 or 3.75 to get that same gauge. Beside that, you have your washing instructions, how to wash, whether you can put it in the dryer. In this case, you shouldn't iron or dry clean it. The last piece of information you'll find on a yarn label is the dye lot. Now this one says no dye lot. So our color is antique white. This is the color number. But if I look at this ball of yarn, this blue waves, you'll see that there's a number above the name of the color, as well as the color number down here. And this is your dye lot number. So when companies are dyeing the yarn, they do it in batches. So one batch might come out slightly different than the next batch. They're usually pretty consistent, but there's a possibility with some strong colors that you might get a slight variation in the dye. So if you want to be very sure that your whole project, your sweater or whatever, is all the same and not a slightly different shade of blue in one section than in the other parts, you want to make sure that all your yarn has the same dye lot. So you'll see both of these labels have the same number, 69025. So I know that these two are going to be consistent in color. They were dyed at the same time. So keep an eye out on the dye lot so that you don't end up with one ball that's slightly different. That would be very disappointing. So that's your label reading. Quite often these labels will have a pattern on them as well. And it'll tell you the sizes and what hook size you're going to need to make that particular pattern. So if you're picking this up and you say, oh, I'd love to make that top, you'll know right away that you need a 4mm or a USG/6 hook to make that. And you can grab it right when you're at the store. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful to you and if there are any other tutorials that I could make to help you become a better knitter or crocheter. Thanks for joining me.